And we are live. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. You know the drill. Call your friends, everyone you love, to join us on this call today. And I'm super excited because we have great men to actually enlighten us today on the topic that is actually very important to this incubation program. Today is the third day in the fourth week of our incubation program, and I believe that you've been enjoying it all the while. You've been getting new experience, new exposure, and you are actually building your capacity. Don't forget, our drone training is going to be on site. It's going to be happening this Friday. And so get yourself ready to visit Abeokuta with us. But I digress. So let's come back to our topic for today. But before we actually go into the meat of the discussion, exciting that we have Professor David Delverton, and we have Matt Money, we have Ridwan Shorunke with us today to actually enlighten us on the topic NextGen for digital agriculture and global development. But before that, as usual, would like to share about the organizers of this program, Precision Feed Academy, and I would like to bring up Joseph, the program administrator, to actually take us on. Okay, Joseph, are you there? Please take it away.
All right. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. So before we go proper into the program, I am going to be taking us through the briefing about Precision Field Academy. So let's get going. So at Precision Field Academy, our vision is to create a world where every young person, regardless of their background, has the opportunity to become a digitally savvy farmer or agricultural professional, driving sustainable and equitable growth in their communities through the transformative power of technology. And our mission is to raise next-gen farmers that are tech-inclined and digitally savvy. So at Precision Field Academy, we are a social enterprise. We train and build the capacity of young professionals in modern and emerging technologies for the future of work and to lead with precision agriculture. So we believe in core three methodology, which is education and knowledge sharing, training and skill development, coaching and mentorship. Besides this, we have tech skills in focus, which are drone technology. We are leveraging the power of drone technology to empower farmers and to actually change the paradigm of agriculture in totality. So we also have part of our tech skill, geographic information system, GIS, and remote sensing. This deals with collection of data from satellite or space generally, uh, to practice precision agriculture. We also have data science in agriculture. This is about processing of data, collection of data, basically and plant classification, plant identification, species identification, and all of that. So relating to data science and agriculture. So we have robotics and Internet of Things. This deals with more of embedded systems, having intelligent or expert systems positioned on your farm. For instance, you have systems that can actually help you to trigger your irrigation, working based on time or moisture sensor detection and all of that. So it's around robotics and Internet of Things. We have artificial intelligence and machine learning. This can actually help you to do plant size classification. You can also do yield prediction, also do prediction of pests and diseases, yes, through the algorithm of AI and machine learning. So, and lastly, we have enterprise development. Uh, the end goal of everything is for you to actually harness all this knowledge to create a profitable enterprise that is centered on creating sustainable solutions, formidable solutions in the aspect of precision agriculture. So why do we do what we do? What's our motivation? So we discovered there is a skill gap that needs to be closed, and young professionals need to build skills on both technical and enterprise skills for the future of work in agriculture. And for youth, observing the trend is not enough. Youth needs to be an enabler and player in the fourth industrial revolution and not mere observer. By they facilitating these solutions themselves. So also we have technology is the key to unlock African agricultural potential. For African agriculture to thrive effortlessly, we must leverage the power of technology holistically to change the narratives of agriculture and food cultivation in Africa. So why should you join us? We are creating the future we want in agriculture. And also we connect you to the world of information and opportunities which come in terms of scholarship, internship, and volunteership on both local and international scale for your career growth in precision agriculture. We embrace skill development through project collaboration, research work, community interaction, workshops, and symposium. And lastly, we give you access to coaching and mentorship from industry leaders and professionals. So basically, at Precision Field Academy, we are building a community of young tech inclined and digitally savvy farmers and professionals. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joseph. To reiterate again and again, our goal is to actually build that community of young tech inclined and digitally savvy farmers and professionals that will influence and impact the future of work. And at the end of the day, we can be able to have a better and sustainable world. So yeah, without any more delay, we would actually be inviting on stage our speakers for today's section. And so first, I would like to bring up Ridwan. Yeah, Mr. Ridwan, you're welcome. Okay, you'll be introducing yourself later. Bringing up Matt and Dilip. Thank you so much. So you are all on stage, so we are all set to actually engage. So let me quickly, Matt, do you want to actually say anything before I bring the slide up, or I just go ahead?
Well, I just want to first say thank you, Femi, for having us here today, and thank you for allowing us to be a partner in your guys' program. I'm very excited about the potential of the youth and the next generation in agriculture, and also just across the continent of Africa, outside of agriculture as well. I think the things that you are prioritizing here with this group and prioritizing for your people is very, very important for the future of food security and agriculture overall. So thank you very much for having us. With that, maybe a quick introduction of myself and then my great teammates and partners I have here too that I've been working with for a number of years. I'm Matt Manning. I'm the owner and founder of DevGlobal. And I'm just super excited to be part of this program. And I think the best way I could introduce myself is I'm a builder of teams. And I think that bringing people together in this setting and becoming a team to solve some of the world's problems is very important. And thank you for allowing me to be here today. And why don't I give it a second for Dr. Bergvinson? Why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, hello, and thanks again, Femi, for this opportunity. David Bergenson. I'm a plant breeder by training, but I drifted along as I got enticed into digital technology and had the privilege of starting digital agriculture for the Gates Foundation in 2011, at which time Matt Manning joined me in helping build that team to, transform a vision into realities. So I'm very excited about our conversation today.
Thank you, David. I owe a lot to you in my introduction to this field and to agriculture. So thank you for joining us here today. And thank you for being a continued partner and friend. And now my next good friend and partner, Ridwan, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks very much, Matt. And thanks very much, Femi, for bringing us here. Just before the introduction, I just wanted to mention that, exciting to be here and looking forward to the conversation. For a quick introduction, my name is Ridwan Shorinke. I'm the principal advisor at DevAfric and responsible for DevAfric's business across the sub-Saharan African subcontinent, and by extension, also drive DevGlobal's engagement on the continent of Africa. We provide advisory services in the areas of geospatial technology, monitoring and evaluation, in-country strategy to global partners on the continent of Africa, spanning Kenya, Nigeria, Burkina, Ethiopia, Zambia, DRC, and our goal is to help to maximize the impact of global nonprofits, but also expanding the impact of local organizations like what Femi is actually doing today. So, looking forward to a great conversation in the next hour. Back to you, Matt.
Thank you, Ridwan. I appreciate that introduction. Femi, why don't we move forward in the next slide, and I'll talk a little bit about our agenda and what we're thinking about doing today.
Okay.
Cool. So we're doing some introductions right now. We're going to go over some company overviews. There's maybe a little bit more detail than even what Ridwan just shared about his company and his organization and our global partnership. And then I really view this as an opportunity for David, Ridwan, and I to have a discussion around some what I view as very important questions within global development, digital agriculture, talk a little bit about use cases of the technology and data and skills that you're building. And at any point in time, I would welcome you to bring questions forward in the chat or that type of thing. We'll try to cover them at the end or cover some of them. And those that we don't get to, we can always go back to later as well and follow up with you individually as part of the program. Before we do that, though, I just want to say I'm excited. I'm actually going to come to Nigeria next week, and I'm going to be there with you guys, hopefully out on one of your field visits and some of your guys' training. And I can't wait to experience all of you in person, or those of you that are able to join me in person while I'm there next week. So why don't we move forward, Femi?
Okay.
We already gave an introduction of ourselves. Why don't we move next to the next slide, please, to our organizations. So we have 3 organizations represented here, and we actually work with a number of organizations across these as well. I'll start with DevGlobal. So DevGlobal is a US-based services firm that's really focused on continent and in-country delivery. And in doing so, we work at the intersections of data, technology, innovation, and global development. Some of our projects and programs touch a number of organizations that you're very familiar with, everything from the Gates Foundation to NASA to World Health Organization to Carter Center, Jane Goodall Institute, and a number of others. That work normally entails some part of geospatial work, where you could imagine how drone technology and the skills that you use is part of that Earth observation data and the use of geospatial data and technology, and then community building. And sometimes when you say community building, a lot of it is actually running events or live streams or bringing groups together to facilitate workshops. And what we do is we help these organizations run their projects and programs. But one of the key things that's important to me is the on-continent, in-country delivery. And that's why I went with the model of engaging and working and partnering with my good friend Ridwan and his organization, DevAfrique. So Ridwan, why don't you tell us a little bit about DevAfrique?
Thanks very much, Matt. So I think it's really good that the transition happens from you to me. And, the way DevAfrique essentially came to be was, as a case of helping, global partners, deepen the impact at the last mile, right? And we're talking about the last mile of development intervention. We're talking about, the local, the state level, way below the national level. And, that's where DevAfrique focuses, right? Thinking about how do we maximize social impact, across the continent of Africa. And our philosophy is by leveraging, local talents, who have not only been, trained in the best of institutions, but have also lived, the experience that, a lot of global partners, governments are trying to solve, right? So leveraging local talents who have lived these local issues to solve them, essentially. So for DevAfrique, we do play a very critical role. One, in trying to expand the impact, through superior strategies and understanding of the communities where we live and work. Two, by going over and above, to the last mile of intervention, which is helping to monitor and evaluate the impact of this intervention, but also integrating, the learnings associated with those interventions. And three, thinking about, public data systems and geospatial technology, for us to make very informed decision when it comes to either its ag or its health, there's got to be data, right? There's got to be technology, right? Because through data we're able to review our strategy, think about how do we optimize for efficiency and better delivery, and essentially help the government partners make very informed service delivery and performance optimization decisions. So that's what we do. We do have team present across the continent, 100% African, working with global colleagues like DevGlobal and BeSustainable.io to essentially ensure that we're providing end-to-end spectrum of development intervention in agriculture and other sectors. Back to you, Matt.
Thank you very much, Ridwan. And I think one of the things that Ridwan and I have kind of committed to is realizing when we need to bring the right experts and individuals to the table in order to execute for these organizations in these countries and the people that we're trying to serve. And that's a perfect example of Dr. Bergenson, what we have here in his organization, BeSustainable.io. In order for us to be great at what we do or to bring the most value and impact to the areas we're trying to serve, we need to bring experts that can actually bring a little bit of their background, experience, and years in the field to help us actually serve people better. So, David, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and BeSustainable.io and what you're trying to accomplish there?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Really, BeSustainable.io is really focused on leveraging innovation and technology and partnerships to develop local capacity for sustainable development. So it's very much aligned to what Ridwan has already articulated, is how do we use technology and partnerships to build lasting impact and accelerate the pace at which we address the big challenges that loom ahead of us around climate change, nutritional security, management of natural resources. And so this organization just gives me the flexibility to work with great people like DevGlobal and DevAfrique and serve as an advisor capacity, given diverse experiences I've been privileged to be a part of as a maize breeder, as a leader of an international research organization focused on dryland agriculture that's really important for the African continent, working for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where I had the privilege of being an advisor for Bill Gates on topics like digital agriculture and crop improvement. And so bringing that together just is enabling me to share with different organizations the privileged experiences that I've had on implementing very large programs and trying to compress the time it takes to execute on them. We sometimes had the phrase onward with urgency, and I think that's really what we want to do, is bring partnerships, technology together to address these challenges, but with a sense of urgency and local ownership. So again, thanks for the opportunity to be here on this conversation.
Thanks, David. Appreciate you being here as well. So why don't we move to the next slide and let's actually start some of these discussion areas. So what we did is we broke into a few different categories of discussion, and we prepared a few questions for us to have a conversation around, and we welcome you to put your questions or any information in the chat as well. So let's start with the first one here, and more on a broader global development level. Tell us, maybe I'll put this a little bit to either one of you actually that can speak of it. Tell us a little bit about global development and the role of data, technology, and innovation that you.
Well, let me have a first go at this. When I was at the Gates Foundation, we were managing very large programs that were, interacting with 300 plus partners operating at a continental level. And we realized that if we didn't have data to manage those interactions and to be focused on the types of innovation and how to deliver them, we weren't going to have an impact. And so that was actually the spark that got us into the domain of digital agriculture back in 2011. So very important opportunity, and it remains still a challenge and opportunity to unlock. So I'm interested in what Ridwan has to say on the topic.
Yeah, thanks very much, Dr. Bergenson. I think, really just to break this down a little more, I think, global development, you cannot think about two halves of maybe the organization, right? On the one end, you cannot think about, the government, right? On the second end, you cannot think about, the private sector. But I think, at the intersection of the government, the private sector, as well as the people, right, is global development, right? Essentially thinking about, how do we drive the impact? How do we do good, right? For the society, whether it's in agri or whether it's in health, whether it's in nutrition, that's essentially about global development. And I think right now, the global development space, has an end-to-end life cycle. Sometimes, starts at the very global level with global partners, the likes of, FAO, with the likes of the Gates Foundation, to the last mile, right, which would essentially be actors like, Femi's team, who are necessarily driving capacity, with you all, right? And within this essential value chain, there are different buckets of which for us at DevAfrica, we do play within the advisory bucket, leveraging technology. And as partners in global development, think about how do we drive impact? They really need to think about data, right? They really need to think about technology, and they really need to think about innovation. So think, for example, how do I necessarily optimize the distribution of seeds or farm inputs to farmers in a remote area as maybe Borno in Nigeria, or places like Kenya or Tanzania, if I have $1 million, right? You've got to leverage data, to make those kind of decisions. You've got to leverage technology to optimize, the supply chain, right? But beyond that, it goes to an additional layer, which is even when these farmers themselves, try to understand, what's the most efficient, way for us to, probably plant, or what kind of seeds to use. Those kind of decisions have actually been informed by technology and the right, analysis of data. So that's just a little about global development. It's all about doing good. Take it down to agriculture. You infuse that with data. It's all about optimizing the impact and optimizing the efficiency and maximizing the impact of whatever agricultural interventions you're trying to have at the last one.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Ridwan. Thank you, David, as well. I'm going to pair the next two questions a little bit together because they're a little bit related and actually similar in nature. And I'll start with a little bit of response, and I'd love to hear the feedback or any additional thoughts that I can get from Ridwan and David as I say them. So, the two I have up here are: what advice do you have for earlier career professionals looking to work in global development? And what are some important reminders, values, and principles for the next generation of leaders as they work in global development? And I think both of you, Ridwan and David, have heard me say these things as I engage with organizations and countries and governments, is a few things that commitment to on continent and in country. I think sometimes when you get to this global word and this global development, people lose sight that this work needs to be done and managed and led by and advised by on continent and country resources and people and great minds. That's a very important piece for me as well. And then the next one is around the actual words, technology, and innovation. I think oftentimes we get so infatuated with a shiny object or some new tool or technology that we lose sight of what's important, because that shiny object or tool is going to change. That drone that's here today might be something else tomorrow. That whatever it is, gadget, phone, or whatever it is going to change 5 or 10 years later. And one of the things I try to anchor myself back in, and I try to remind my team and the people we work with, is you got to get the people, the process, and the data right. The actual, tool, technology, and that type of thing will change, but we can't lose sight of the importance of the people, the process, and the data. Now, with that, I would welcome Ridwan or David to challenge me there or add to it, or maybe put their own context in that as well. So David, Ridwan, over to you.
Yeah, thanks.
Go ahead, Ridwan.
So, I can essentially go. I think, Matt, I think you pretty much hit it just right on the head, right? I think, as DevGlobal and DevAfrica, we kind of think about, people, the process and the data, right? And sometimes, I think just on top of the data, you've got to sometimes, substitute with the policy, right? With the policy, with the partnership, right? Because at the end of the day, I think, in development, there's always an idea that, clearly you can't do it alone, right? You've got to partner. I mean, there's so much issue in the communities where you live, and, you've got to think about what about the issues, right? Across the world. So for you to solve those issues, it's got to be an incremental partnership, right? Femi working with Ridwan working with Matt working with David, right? And if you kind of look at, the icon just at the base of that slide, you kind of see that, there's like a network there, right? So it's really important to think about, solving developmental issues from a partnership perspective, right? We work together, we leverage competencies. Thinking about, the advice for the early career professional, I think at the most fundamental, traits to have, right, in development would be, the love for impact, right? It's a very interesting, space, but also completely different to the private sector, right? The need to drive impact is fundamental, but beyond that is also think about, what's the best way for you to drive impact. Do you want to be like, in the field, contributing and working with, the people within the communities, or do you want to be in the office, driving the strategy with the skill set you have, right? Thinking about the data that then informs the decision that happens on the field. Secondly, that I wanted to mention is, I think, just to Matt's point around, local talent, local solution. It's really important to think about, leveraging local talent who understand the dynamics of the land, the political context, the economic context, the cultural context as well, to solve the issue. And I think one of the advice is for early career professionals looking to work in global development, not just only to embed themselves in the community where they're working, but to leverage the locals who have understood and lived the experience, because nothing trumps that. So, and finally, on the values and principle, before passing to David, is I think, at the heart of it all, what we do in DevGlobal and DevAfrique alongside this sustainable is doing the right thing with the right partners and scaling, as quickly as possible and as flexible as possible. So we'll pass it to David to add on to that, or come to that.
Great. Yeah, that's a very comprehensive framing. I would add, and it's a lesson I learned in my own professional career very on, is human-centered design. Really engaging with key stakeholders to understand what the problem is in the first place, and then developing appropriate solutions that have local ownership for scale and sustained adoption. So that's probably the only thing I would really add to that. I think as a young professional, looking at opportunities that really you're passionate about, because there's going to be times when it's going to get really tough, and you're going to need that passion to get you through to the other side when things aren't going so well. So it really needs to resonate with you as an individual, that this is an important topic and that you have something to contribute. And so, this whole domain around Precision Field Academy, empowering young professionals with the new tools to take on these big challenges, but focusing on a domain that you're really passionate about is going to really help you see it through to the end.
That's perfect. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate that. Why don't we move to the next slide and talk a little bit more specifically about agriculture? So a few more questions here, and we'll make our way through them as best we can. And we have a couple more slides of questions as well if we end up having time. But, I'm going to start with David, just because I do recognize the history of digital agriculture and how I owe so much to you in this industry and this opportunity that I've been around it, and that you were actually appointed to lead this. Provide some background and history in digital agriculture, David, if you don't mind, and what you'd like to share with today's audience.
Yeah, sort of in quotes, back in the day, now we're not talking that far, about 2008, as I was working at the Gates Foundation managing fairly large, complicated projects, including ones that were focused on precision agriculture in South Asia, is recognizing that, one, we didn't have a lot of good data assets curated and available for helping us make insights into agriculture development. And two, is that there tended to be a little bit of reticence between the public and the private sector of working together on these complex issues. Didn't matter if it was in Africa or Latin America or Asia. There was this tension. And third is I could see firsthand the rapid change that was taking place in the agriculture ecosystem and its impact it was having on the most marginalized, especially smallholder farmers that were working in rain-fed agriculture systems. And so taking these three things together, it was sort of an epiphany that we really needed to use digital technology in a much more systematic and coherent manner to realize huge delivery of solutions that are needed with a sense of urgency. So I presented a business case to Bill Gates back in 2011 on this topic. We focused on 5 different domains that included geospatial tools and data, such as remote sensing and drone imagery. Genomics, at that time, high throughput genotyping was just really starting to gain traction, and whole genome sequencing. 3, we were looking at mobile phone, which at this point in time had about 3.5 units out there, 3.5 billion units, and a population of 7 billion people. And also thinking about cloud and how we bring all these data assets together and to bear on the big development challenges that we were facing. At that point in time, it wasn't called the cloud, by the way. We presented to Bill Gates. We brought in industry experts from around the world, pitching on these different domains. And at the end of that, Bill said, yeah, we just got to do this. And so that was really the birth of digital agriculture at the Gates Foundation. And there were very few organizations that were scratching the surface of digital agriculture at that point in time. And now, 12 years on, it's common in our lexicon, digital agriculture as a tool for delivering sustainable solutions to our food system.
Thanks, David. Super appreciate it. The next 2 questions are staying in that digital agriculture area. Maybe identify a unique challenge or maybe a really big challenge that you faced as you tried to launch digital agriculture efforts with the Gates Foundation and across this field globally, David.
Yeah, I think, the biggest challenge was being at the vanguard of this and creating market awareness and understanding of what digital agriculture was in the first place. And then 2 was to build the coalition to actually realize that vision between the public sector, the private sector, and governments. And those 2 areas were really challenging, even inside the Gates Foundation, where one would think there would really be esprit de corps and collaboration. People were a little reticent of new things. People didn't like change, and digital agriculture was that kind of change that actually was a bridge between not just agriculture, but bridged over to financial services, over to health. It is a real enabler for holistic development that cuts across these different domains of health, finance, agriculture, you name it, education. I took a lot of examples from education, which at the time was far ahead of agriculture, as using digital platforms for knowledge exchange.
That's a great segue, actually, and something that I want to maybe pivot to Ridwan a little bit here is around when you hear David talk about his efforts in digital agriculture. I know a lot about your efforts in health and policy and other things, Ridwan. Are there certain challenges or maybe even similarities in those other sectors, or maybe even a project example or 2 where the same things that we're facing in digital agriculture you've faced elsewhere and learned from?
Yeah, thanks very much, Matt. I think, fundamentally to anything digital is data, right? And, we've done a lot of work at the intersection of, data, geospatial technology, and health and agri and sanitation, right? And, across the continent, from Nigeria to DRC to Kenya, issues around data quality, right, remains very, very massive, right? I mean, sometimes, you kind of think about, data at a very national level, but, we're thinking about data from, a triangular aspect, like a pyramid, right? You've got to get data, from the farms, from the fields, from the extension officers who are actually going there to actually provide the data. So the quality of data, and the accuracy of those data, remains a major concern, right? And beyond just the quality and accuracy, we're thinking about, the completeness of the data in itself, how robust it is. And that's why, when we're starting to think about the work in other sectors like health, there's increasing emphasis on geospatial technology. In health, for example, GIS is being used, which has some linkages to drone technology as well, is being used, for supply chain optimization. How do we think about, distance from hospitals to, PHC centers to the last mile to vaccinate? The same thing whereby, in Kenya, NASA Harvest, which is, an Earth observation for field level agricultural research mapping, EOFAM, start to think about, how do we necessarily use Earth observations to drive key decision making when it comes to agriculture. So, and it's also doing that just to make sure that you're bridging the gap when it comes to availability of data and the quality of data. And I think that this is something that Earth observation can do. So that's a big one on the continent, and I think that across board, that's also part of what actors are necessarily doing to ensure that there is robust data for ag monitoring as well as decision making.
Perfect. Thank you, both of you. Why don't we move forward to the next slide and we can chat a little bit about some use cases specific to drones imagery and the skill set that this group is learning as part of this program. Femi, would you mind moving to the next slide, please? So when we put together the plan for this academy and chatted with Femi, one of the things we talked about, and I visited with David and Ridwan on, is identifying use cases for this. I think a lot of people that are learning a new skill or a new technology or a way to do something, it's actually the ability to, what's the actual use and value for something on the ground versus, understanding the people and the problem that you're trying to solve. So I'll start with David. What are what is an example or two of a specific use case for drone technology, data, and skill sets like those being developed here in the Precision Field Academy?
Yeah, I think, drone evolution has been dramatic over the last decade, and the payload capacity of drones now enables them to do precision applications of cover crops, for example, for seeding, for delivery of fertilizer in spot areas where there's under fertilization, spot applications of pesticides, especially fungicides, but also insecticides and herbicides, so that we have less environmental damage and runoff of agrochemicals into our water system. And so drones give us a bird's eye view of farming systems that we just didn't have before, or if we had them, it was very expensive. And it's democratized our way to visualize farm fields and take appropriate action. So really, the use cases are almost limitless. It's only limited by your imagination and understanding the problems that need to be solved at the farm level. So, one specific example for drones is around precision agriculture and optimizing the delivery of inputs that ultimately increase farm profitability. At the end of the day, farmers want to make money, and drones can be a very powerful tool to enable farmers to realize that vision towards profitable farming.
Thanks, David. And I'm going to skip down to I'm going to actually combine 2 and 3 a little bit just because it's cross geography, but also just non-agricultural use cases potentially even as well. Is the same skills that you're developing in this academy and this audience is learning it through Precision Field Academy actually has application in other places too outside of agriculture as well? And I would love to hear from Ridwan any examples you can think of where this skill set or this type of technology and data has value, or that you've seen have value elsewhere.
Yeah, thanks very much, Matt. I think it's really interesting because it's amazing what drones can do. I mean, there's from military capabilities of drones to health to supply chain. But I want to stay on health and maybe just kind of like create a linkage with agriculture, right? On the health. One interesting, organization that we've engaged with, in my previous engagement has been Zipline, right? And Zipline works in Ghana, in Rwanda, and I think what Zipline is doing is quite transformational. With the use of drone, for blood delivery during emergency situations. So essentially, hospitals who actually need blood. As quickly as possible. You have Zipline leveraging drones, for delivery of blood, from point A to point B, right? During COVID-19, Zipline necessarily leverage, drone technology for delivery of, other health supplies that they use in Ghana, in Rwanda, and it's really transformational because when we're talking about real life impact, I mean, this is an example of impact, right? Ideally where you're necessarily going from point A to point B, you would probably have spent like an hour coupled with the road traffic, but you're using drones to make that delivery, right? So lots of lives have been saved. Beyond that, that kind of also have like the linkages with what Delta Quad is doing in agriculture in the US, right? Thinking about the use of drone technology for cattle monitoring, vegetable, the mapping of vegetation, as well as estimation of yield, which is quite similar to what NASA Harvest is doing in Kenya as well. So massive, possibilities. And I also do know that, Amazon is starting to test out, how do you leverage, drone tech to actually, drive supply chain optimization in the US as well.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for both of those. One quick note before we move to the next slide is, the combination of data sets and the value of this data in other places as well. When I really think about what is produced or what is gathered through drone technology and the skills that you're developing, is the ability to combine that with other data to help inform decisions or help us make decisions on how to serve people. I've seen examples where maybe drone technology or outputs from drone technology and data could actually be combined together with other imagery or other ground truth data to help us with things like population modeling or understanding roadways or understanding, lots of interesting, important information about an area that we need to serve or solve a problem or have some sort of urgent case come up, whether it's in, emergency response situation or whether it's around understanding how to get from point A to point B. There's a lot of use of this data. Okay, let's move to the last. Go ahead, David.
I just add on to that, at Precision Field Academy, high level.
Unfortunately, I think we're losing David a little bit here with he's in Tanzania right now. And
I dropped, sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the artificial intelligence, is going to open up a lot of opportunities for us, and bringing those data assets together and distilling actionable insights, especially around precision agriculture, is a huge opportunity. So being on the vanguard of how to integrate AI and machine learning into drone imagery and data assets is going to be really important.
All right, let's go ahead and go to our last slide of questions here so we can wrap up today's stream. Femi, would you mind moving to the next slide, please? There we go. Youth and next generation. I want to just pivot this right towards the group that's mostly watching. One slide back, please. Why is it important that we engage youth in next generation global development, agricultural development efforts? And then, I would combine that with the second question: what role does technology and innovation play in engaging youth in the next generation of leaders? I'll start with a few thoughts here, and then obviously turn it over to my experts and partners that I have here. Is one of the things is that there's a gap in generation when it comes to solving some of these problems, or we have these like great ideas down here, but we don't have a way to actually bridge the gap between generations of those decision makers that are in place right now. So I think by us making a concerted effort to engage youth and next generation leaders and connect the dots, you're actually invested in the future in a way that maybe that generation that's in leadership now isn't, and that you might have come with a fresh new idea or perspective to bring to the table. And then I'll use an agriculture example, and I would love to hear David's story on this. Is one of the challenges in agriculture is actually getting the next generation interested in it. And I think that through the use of technology and innovation and some of this like opportunity to do things different or better, actually interest them in a way that maybe traditional farming and agriculture practices maybe had not. And so, David, what's your experience, globally around that and other locations of how does technology, innovation, something like drones help us actually engage that next generation?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Well, I mean, the next generation are largely digital natives, so they take to these new tools very easily. But as you point out, traditional agriculture has not been attractive, and many youth want to leave the farm to explore opportunities in cities. What we're seeing now is youth are very concerned about our planet, how we're being good stewards of it. One of those areas is around regenerative agriculture, where we restore this health of the soil and our water systems and biodiversity. And when we bring those two worlds together of digital native and a care for the planet, there's a huge opportunity for entrepreneurship in the youth to use digital tools to improve our food system so that it's sustainable, improve biodiversity so that future generations can enjoy the beauty of our planet as we have. And I think, our opportunity here is bringing some of, as you point out, some of the policymakers that don't have that kind of exposure and bring them together with youth. When we bring these diverse and intergenerational teams together, it creates some excitement that one doesn't find when you just look at leadership or you just look at youth. When you bring them together, there's some chemistry there, and I think this is a big opportunity for Precision Field Academy, for DevAfrique, DevGlobal, to be that catalyst for intergenerational exchange of ideas and generating a shared vision of what our food system could look like.
Perfect. Thanks for that. Ridwan, maybe pairing those questions with also the last one to add in the final advice that you'd give our audience or someone who's watching it is, talk about the importance as you grow a company and serve the world and engage in that next generation and how you're doing it. But then also, what guidance would you give to those people watching this on, to the use of drone technology and other innovations?
Yeah, thanks very much, Matt. I think Nigeria is a typical example of why we should engage youth, right? Massive youth population, insufficient ag production, largely subsistence, agriculture, massive room for deployment of, tech in agriculture. And I think what Femi is doing with Precision Field Academy is exactly what we need, right? It's also a typical use case of leveraging technology to deploy capacity building when it comes to agriculture. So we've got to continue that, and I think that's really important. Second is that for youth, especially those passing through grad school and new entrants into the market, it's really important to build up on the skills, right? Clearly, there's a lot of challenges, and we need very high number of innovative solutions. Very high number of people willing to test the waters, with ideas, with solutions. But for us to have those set of people, we've got to invest strongly in capacity building of those youth, right? So that's why it's important. For Africa, very massive youth population. There's going to be a population boom and a population expansion in the years to come. So massive responsibility, and there is a lot of mouths to feed, right? So really important for us to drive, interest of the youth in this. And I think that by going above and beyond, driving partnership at scale, we can easily achieve that. And the final advice, I just really wanted to give to the audience today is there's a lot of opportunity in ag, both at the top of the value chain, but also at the last mile, which is in the field, right? So you either think about ag and tech from a point of either contributing to the generation of the data, to the analysis of the data and the utilization of the data, but on the other end could also be like the implementation of service delivery efforts. So that's really important. This is the time to build competency in that area, and I think that by continuing and scaling up the efforts of Precision Field Academy and the likes, we should be able to achieve that. But it's a pleasure joining this session today.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Ridwan. And then David, that last question for you. What's the final advice or guidance that you'd give our audience or someone who's watching this live stream later as you think about the use of drone technology and other innovations?
Yeah, I think, keeping the end in mind is very important. So what problem are you solving, and who are the people that you need to bring together to work with you to solve it? That human-centered design approach of making sure you understand the context and what motivates people to adopt a technology is very important for success. And finally, just really doing something that you're passionate about, because that's going to give you the fuel to see your vision through to completion.
That's perfect. Thank you, David. And I guess maybe a final word from me on this, and I'm going to go back to some of the things that I talked about earlier, is I'm a real big believer in teams. And I think that an opportunity like this to connect with this group of young, great minds is just a great opportunity to add to a team. And I hope that I not only get to meet some of you when I'm in Nigeria next week or on the continent over this next year, but I just would encourage you to find your team or build your team to solve that problem. I think that we're better together when we can build a team to get something done, and that there's somebody else out there that has an ability to add to what you bring to the table, and we can do something if we're working together and doing so. I think with that, Femi, I want to be mindful of time. I don't know if you want to come back on stage. Are there any priority questions in the Q&A or anything that you'd like us to address here these last couple minutes before we have to go to our next meeting and call?
All right. Yeah, I think I can see some questions here, and I also have some questions to add to what we already have here in our comment section. So yeah, but quick comment. I I mean, I could not keep up with some great sound bites, and that you all are actually sharing with us this evening from my hand. So I think I have a question from Adepoju Kola. Uh, So I'm going to put that up. It says, how do we deal with cost implication attributed to drone acquisition, expensive software for data analysis? So if I would phrase the question, there are actually costs, relatively high costs to this next generation individuals. How can we actually solve that challenge? Because that's actually one of the challenge for young professionals. Yeah.
Interesting. I'll take a first stab at it, and I'll go back to some of the things that I've heard Ridwan and David say today around partnership. I think that if individuals and individual farmers and individuals within the service industry are trying to take on all that cost themselves rather than building a team or a coalition or some sort of partnership to solve this, that cost barrier might be a little bit larger. But if we build the right structures and processes in place, access to this technology or drones or software become easier. I also know that there's a lot of organizations that are really committed to serving the world, and that if you're creative in how you engage them, and you can have a two-way value of, what I'm doing for you has value, just like what you can provide me has value. There's a lot of opportunity for trade of ideas and services and technology. David or Ridwan, do you have anything to say about that?
No, I think you nailed it.
Yeah, Matt, let me just add two things there. I think, this is a challenge that we experience on the ground as well. I mean, we work on the continent, we understand this. I understand, what you're trying to ask. And I think one thing to say is, one, try to leverage free versions, non-expensive versions. For example, if you're thinking about, GIS, it would be better for you to go for QGIS rather than ArcGIS. We're strong proponent and developers of open source, right? We are available open source if possible. We've done that at DevGlobal and DevAfric, building ramp. And third is that, I think it's always going to be important to share, right? Talking to Matt's point, share. In tractor farming, mechanized farming and tractor, renting, Hello Tractor has a good model whereby, you get a drone, and then you then rent to several people within the community. So Hello Tractor does that, which gets a tractor and then rent it to farmers within the community. So I think this could be a model that somebody can also pivot when it comes to drone technology in Nigeria as well.
Perfect. I love both those.
All right.
I mean, is there one more question we can do today? I know there's probably many of them, and perhaps when I'm in Nigeria next week, you and I can talk about a follow-up as well on some of these. Is there anything else that you want to go with today?
Okay, please, let's just actually deal with this question, because this is actually one of the limitations of this program, particularly the physical component. So Samuel is from Ghana, and he said, how does the next generation get hands-on training from other countries, especially in Africa? So if you get what I mean, we are based in Nigeria, but he cannot actually have access to the physical section of our training because we are based in Nigeria. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm going to take a stab at this, and I'm going to let the group say as well, but I think that what you're doing is a lighthouse example. So I don't think there's a lot of individuals and organizations that are providing such a cost-friendly, accessible model to this type of training and information. That's one of the reasons why I came in and supported it, is because I think that what you have here is very special. And I think that this same model and approach could be applied to other parts of the world, and even importantly across different countries in Africa. And I know that I want to be an advocate for it. And I know that I want to be part of the process of hopefully getting global donors or local governments realize the importance of this work, and that investment in the people will actually pay off long term to serve the world better. So I'm going to be an advocate of yours, Femi. I'm going to take this idea and concept and share it with others, make sure that people understand that what we're doing has value and we need to do more of it. And I think that connecting it to our other work that we have together around ICT for Ag, which ICT4Ag.com team and people watching this, that's a great event series that actually wants to expose content and opportunities like this, or the Learning Network, or NextGen ambassadors that Femi's leading there. great opportunities to show this to the world so other people want to make it happen in other places. David, Ridwan?
I think you nailed it.
Yeah, and I would also just add, YouTube and other channels for disseminating knowledge are very powerful. And, we should just be very creative in how we use those resources to get messages out and create partnerships and followings of like-minded individuals to build those coalitions and partnerships that Matt talked about. So, this is, Precision Field Academy's, a really great example. There's others out there, and how do we create that ecosystem for knowledge exchange and ultimately impact?
Yeah, and I would say, we have, one, physical location right now, and we have a virtual reach that is at a certain level that's pretty amazing already. But there's no reason why one shouldn't become 5, and that our reach shouldn't be times 5 or times 10 when we run the next Field Academy. And that's going to take teamwork. And I think together we can do that. And I really look forward to being part of that with you, Femi.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you so much, Ridwan. Thank you so much, Dr. David. It's been a wonderful time. I know that we have to wrap up now. So guys, if you have any questions and queries, please send us an email. And if you're in the community already, please, that's very close. You can actually drop your questions or inquiries. It would be great to hear back from you. Please also drop your feedbacks from what you've learned today. We are actually glad to have you all join us today. Yeah, thank you so much.
Hey, Ridwan and Femi, I can't wait to see you next week. I'm just super excited about being in person with both of you.
Let's make it happen.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you so much. We can't wait to have you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
We're ending the stream now. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Yeah.